Welcome to another Friday at 5.
We're joined here with Tom from Kanpai. Thanks for coming.
Hello.
How are you?
Very good. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, all right. It's been one of those weeks. As always.
Yeah.
I feel like we always say the same thing on a Friday.
Yeah, it's because every week's about the same, isn't it?
Yeah, that's fair.
Welcome everyone.
Yeah, thanks a lot for joining. We're going to be talking about all things sake this afternoon.
Yeah.
Following on from our collab, when did that launch? September? No,
Yeah,
a couple of
months ago.
Yeah, a couple of months ago.
a while ago.
Which was this one here, which we'll get to a little later on because I haven't tasted it since then. I had quite a big, I think we did an Instagram live and had a bit of a chat about the collab. And then afterwards, I drank quite a lot of sake and woke up with a sore head. So
It's always good, isn't it?
yeah.
That must have been the other stuff you were drinking afterwards.
Yeah, of course. It wasn't the copious amounts, right? Cool. Today we've got 4 sakes to go through and a collab, and I think we'll start off with a beer.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a beer.
We had a beer.
We had a beer. Don't know where that's gone. What have you been up to this week then, Will?
So this week, God, what's been happening this week? We brewed the vintage today.
That's exciting.
That's part of this week. So we got the honey in on Monday, so we did some tasting of the honey. That's really cool. It's the best time of the year for us, right?
Yeah.
And then, God, we've just been having fun with social and
and Photoshop and Illustrator and doing new labels for the small batch program, which we're getting ready. Oh, we've got the canning can scene for the small batch.
The small batch as well finally finished this week.
Which is good. So this is our crowdfunder
stuff. Yeah, of course.
Which is
Yeah.
cool.
Is that closed now?
That's closed, it closed on Thursday. We did it, which is good.
Great.
So we've got
Can't
about
go.
40 people signed up to get cans each month, which is really
Perfect.
exciting. And it gives us an idea. Yeah, we can expand that a bit in the future.
How about you, Tom? What have you been doing this week?
What have I been doing? I've just been doing a lot of admin. It's been a life admin, work admin week. And what else have I done? I haven't cooked anything this week. I haven't actually been in the kitchen all week.
I cooked this week. I cooked some potato and leek soup.
Oh. Was it chunky or did you blend
No, I
it?
blended it, but I overdid the potatoes, so it kind of came out like mashed potatoes with leek in it. My girlfriend was very happy.
Fair enough.
But
Sounds hearty for the weather.
yeah, I thought so. She did not. That's the beauty of having a partner. You get both sides of every story.
Of course.
How about you, Tom? You been in the kitchen this week?
Every day, yeah. That's kind of my, the end of the evening when I get home, that's kind of my relaxation. Yeah.
Wind down.
Yeah. Done some interesting stuff this week. Did on Sunday some proper like Jacob's Ladder ribs, slow cook.
Nice, yeah.
Like 7-hour slow cook.
Yeah.
And we actually like marinated them in koji. So the mold spore, which we'll talk about in a bit, kind of tenderizes the meat, brings out the natural umami from the meat.
Yeah, I was going to say, does it have a bit of a miso type flavour when you taste it, or is it a little bit different?
It's kind of the miso element without the salt.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So you gotta think about that. Yeah, it's kind of additional kind of meaty, mushroomy, just kind of nice umami. Yeah, it's like great for meat and vegetables, like a natural seasoning. Kind of enhances the natural flavour rather than imparting a new flavour. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I don't really cook with koji that much, but
Yeah,
it's
like a fun thing to do, and we launched this fermented from sake food range that's on our website.
Oh, nice.
So we do like a couple of the byproducts from sake, so the kasu, which is the pressed rice. We do aged mirin, so cooking sake, basically like sweeter cooking sake, and barrel aged sake vinegar. That's awesome.
That's cool.
And then the koji rice as well. Yeah.
we did some mead vinegar. There's some mead vinegar in the office
There's
right
some
now.
mead vinegar in the office. That is good stuff.
I only just learnt that if the vinegar's ready when the mother actually falls to the bottom, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, you should have like mother in circulation at the bottom, and then ideally like a yeast film on top. That's kind of what you're looking for. Yeah.
Sick.
Yeah.
It's like we pulled out a bottle of our, we did a homebrew episode last week, and I pulled some out of this wild pitch yeast that I did. Pulled it out and left a little bit of headspace, and I just got the nicest pellicle.
Yeah.
Like it just went straight. As soon as I got some oxygen in there, I was like, that's sick. I love that.
That's pretty cool.
All right, where should we start? Because we didn't start with a beer, so I'm kind of getting a bit
So we
thirsty.
go straight in for the cans?
Yeah,
Let's do it. It's
Cool.
5 minutes past 5 and I haven't had a drink on a Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah. So guys, if you've got any questions as we go through, just type it in the comment section below and we'll endeavour to answer them. Sometimes. We normally answer them.
we do pretty good.
Do all right.
So I mean, we can crack this. We can obviously talk about this. We can talk a bit more about, I guess, how sake is made.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, let's do it.
So this is kind of a relatively new product for us. We call this a session sake. So typically sake is kind of strong wine territory, around 15-16%. This is 5.5 and is infused with Japanese yuzu fruit, so indigenous citrus fruit in Japan. Somewhere between like lime and a mandarin kind of territory.
Cool.
It's that combined with British cucumbers.
Oh, nice.
So kind of a nice palate refresher, nice...
So did you brew it at 5.5 or did you sort of cut it down with some adjuncts?
Yeah, so this is it's a pure sake, but it's brewed at lower alcohol. But then when we do the infusion, there's a little bit of water added.
Okay.
So
But it's mainly it's not that you're cutting down a 12%.
no,
sake.
exactly, yeah. So it's a much kind of like lower ABV product to start with.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Oh, yeah, cool.
So nice little bit of fizz, bit of a spritz.
That cucumber is like...
my nose, yeah.
Straight away. Cucumber is such a... Like, how do you go working with cucumber as well? Like, I know cucumber sometimes can be a real pain in the ass.
Well, I mean,
Get that.
I personally hand juiced them all, so that was good fun. But yeah, I mean, it's an awesome kind of botanical, really, cucumber. I mean, the aroma you get off it.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I think, you know, if you're just cooking with cucumber or having it in a salad, you kind of think, oh, it doesn't have much flavour, but actually, there's so much going on. Especially if you kind of, you know, take a cucumber home and kind of peel the aroma that comes off it. So actually, I think you've got to be really balanced with it because cucumber can be quite overpowering.
Mm-hmm. So do you use the skin of the cucumber as well, or...?
Yeah, these are whole...
everything?
Yeah, everything. I'd say, majority of the flavour is actually coming from the skin.
That's really nice. Yeah. Just a little bit of sake in it. Like, you can tell it's sake.
Yeah. The idea is just to have something really clean, real nice kind of sake base. And then it's these nice aromatics to kind of enhance that. Got a nice kind of body on it still, nice bit of carbonation. Yeah, and it's like a ready to drink format. Just take that to the party.
I just have a little bit more. I kind
of course,
smashed mine already.
Of course, you are.
Good man. But yeah, so let's talk a little bit about just sake in general. Like, what is sake really?
Yeah, so for anyone, I'll kind of go back to basics for anyone that doesn't know. So sake is a fermented alcohol from rice. So rice is your base. A lot of people refer to sake as a rice wine. It's not kind of really an accurate description. Obviously, wine should be coming from fruit. There's no fruit within the sake. And the fermentation is actually much closer to a beer. So we kind of view the production much more in line with beer, but then the outcome kind of sits somewhere maybe more around wine territory for drinking. We kind of treat it much more, I think, like a wine for sipping, etc. It's definitely not a spirit. So sake is not distilled. However, a lot of sake that's out there has been cut with a distilled spirit. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean it's any stronger. It's been kind of diluted down and bolstered back up.
Yeah, we find the same thing with mead as well in certain areas as well.
Doing
that.
Especially in like that sort of airport style mead, right?
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
sort of mass produced and gives the rest of the category a bit of a bad name.
Yes, yes. And, especially the addition of maybe a lot of distilled alcohol to fortify a sake, that's kind of really a bit of a hangover from the Second World War. So in Japan, like rice production was used, so obviously like rice was kind of rationed. Mm-hmm. So rice production was used for food over sake production. So a lot of the big producers kind of worked out new kind of modern methods of brewing the same amount of sake, but with less rice. So that's kind of where that's come from.
That's interesting.
But everything we brew at Kanpai is known as junmai sake. Junmai means pure rice. So there's no kind of added alcohol. And, across our range, we're going to taste a few different things today. But the vast majority of the sake that we make only comes from 4 ingredients. So the rice, the water, the yeast for fermentation, but then the koji, which we touched on before. So if you take kind of a rice grain, we don't have any immediate access to sugar. So we have complex carbohydrates, as well as small amount of protein, a small amount of lipids, fats. So we kind of just threw rice, yeast, and water into a tank. Nothing's going to happen because the yeast needs access to sugar. So we need a way of breaking those long chain carbohydrates down into glucose for the yeast to ferment into alcohol. And that's where the koji comes in. So we take portions of our steamed rice, which we inoculate with the mold spore, the koji kin spore, and we incubate that over about 72 hours. And over kind of increasing temperature, decreasing humidity, the mold grows initially around the outside of the rice. And then when the outside of the rice becomes dry to reduction of humidity, it then begins to shoot these hyphas, like tunnels, into the center of the grain. And at that point, we create loads of amylase enzymes. Yeah. And the amylase is the same enzyme we have in our saliva, but also is what's utilized in beer production, in malted barley to release the sugars. So rather than malting the rice, we use a fungus to kind of aid that production. And we view the koji rice as kind of the engine, like the wheelhouse within the fermentation. And then we add more steamed rice as the fuel. That koji rice breaks down the steamed rice, releases the sugars. The yeast then ferments that in turn into alcohol. So the interesting thing about sake is it's known as a multi-parallel fermentation. So your sugar production and your alcohol production happens simultaneously within the tank. So you're like fermenting your mash. That's the way to kind of think about it. Yeah.
Because I remember, I don't know how much truth to it, but I remember when I first sort of heard of sake, I remember the story of like, that sort of, because you used to eat rice hulls. Yes. And then you just spit them into the bucket.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that used to start the fermentation in there. Yeah. And then I don't know who drank that, but somebody.
Well, I think a lot of people for thousands of years drank that,
Because you did the same with corn maize as well.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I was going to say. It's like a South American.
Really which still goes on now in the Amazon and absolutely. So prior to kind of, I guess, cultured koji, since that was kind of captured and then cultivated, prior to that it was done, with, the village kind of sitting around.
Talking about the South American one, like there was teeth shown where, like, because it used to be a job within the, one group of people would have that job within the tribe, and they would find teeth that are completely worn down from sitting there all day, just like chewing on maize and just wear your teeth down to nothing.
It would do,
definitely would.
But
things have moved on a little bit since then.
So it's quite a simple process then.
Yeah, exactly.
Not labor intensive.
Easy to learn, easy to master. That's why everyone's doing it, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sorry.
Gets a bit
so where is sake most popular? I assume, Japan, but is there another sort of like mecca hub outside of Japan?
So obviously sake as we know it, like modern sake comes from Japan. It's got approximately like a 5,000 year history from within Japan, but also certain other kind of rice alcohol categories across Asia.
There's was it Chinese liquor as well used to have rice.
Yeah. So there's elements, I think, throughout Asia where they have rice fermentation, utilizing koji as well, or some other kind of bacterial yeast combination. You have that in Korea as well. But then you've got a number of distilled drinks across the continent that have similar style initial fermentation, but then it's distilled. Which is like shochu in Japan can be distilled from rice, but also other grains, also sweet potato, barley, but it has to utilize koji as the enzymatic reaction.
Okay, cool.
To produce the sugars within that.
Does that break down the starch as well as complex carbohydrates?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. And then another
starch
kind of
is a complex carbohydrate.
So another kind of cool element from the koji. So we kind of beforehand we were kind of chatting about miso and other things, and koji, if applied to say barley, with like a lower temperature initial incubation of the koji, you actually make protease enzymes. So breaks down protein into amino acids. That's what makes umami, and that's how soy sauce is made, how miso is made. Yeah. So they're all koji-based fermentation, but to make flavor and seasoning and umami over making alcohol. So there's no.
So there was one other thing that what's the difference between koji kin and koji mead? Koji mead? Why am I thinking
koji mead?
Me, as in
koji mai. Okay,
koji mai.
So koji kin is like is basically the spore itself before it's been implanted onto a medium. Koji Mai is specifically Koji rice and Mai rice, like Jun Mai.
Okay, that makes sense.
So Koji Mai. That's the rice that's already been inoculated and incubated and ready to use for fermentation, which is what we sell on our website as well. Yeah.
Sick.
That's cool.
Well, let's keep cracking on. These, by the way, these get out of hand really easily.
Yeah, so we end up getting through quite a bit of booze in 40 minutes, and then you just end up being like,
good.
It gets a bit looser towards the end.
Yeah. So that's why we always try to get the information out at the start, right?
Yeah, do the technical bit at the beginning, and then just get loose.
Technical bit, yeah.
Cool. So next one, this is what we call a Junmai Ginjo. So pure rice, Junmai is our sake. Ginjo, this is kind of one of the upper two kind of echelons of premier of sake. So basically, sake is graded based on whether it's got alcohol added or no alcohol added. Everything we do is on the no alcohol Junmai kind of slant. And then beyond that, it's graded on the polishing rate of the rice.
Okay, yeah.
So this is a Junmai Ginjo. A Junmai Ginjo has to be within 51 to 60% polishing. And what we mean by polishing, if we took a rice grain like out the field, it's got the husk and it's got the germ. We remove both of those two things and we have a whole brown rice grain. That brown rice grain is 100%. And when we start polishing the outside of it down to basically reveal the pure starch center, we then state the percentage that's remaining on the grain.
So what does the polishing do? I remember we had this little chat a while ago, which I found quite interesting.
So typically, we brew with, say, sake mai. So this is brewed with a rice specifically cultivated for sake production. Sake mai has a pure collection of starch within the center of the grain known as a shimpaku. And you can visibly see it when you look at the grain. It's like a solid white heart to the rice.
Right, okay.
If you're kind of taking, regular rice off the shelf to cook with a white grain, you've typically got your starch scattered throughout the grain and kind of high levels of protein and fat within that as well. With a sake mai, you've got the collection of starch in the middle, and then the opaque portion on the outside has got slightly elevated portions of protein and fat.
Oh, right. So as you polish it, you're just getting the starch in the center.
Correct. So the more you polish, depending on the rice grain, the more you polish, in theory, you're exponentially increasing the proportion of starch and diminishing the proportion of protein and fat. The protein, based on your protease production in the koji, will dictate how savory, how umami the sake is. Mm-hmm. If you don't have much protein or not much protease, you're going to have more of a pure starch-based fermentation, and that's going to give you a much more elegant, floral, aperitif style.
Right. Cool.
So the biggest price driver for a sake is the quality of the rice and then the amount it's been polished. If you're using a rice that's been polished, say, to 35%, you've got to use twice the amount of rice to make the same amount of sake as you do to a 70%.
That's the process of polishing the rice.
Correct. And then you're paying for the privilege of losing that portion of rice. So that's the biggest price driver. It's got no dictation on real quality of the product. It's much more style specific.
Okay.
So you could really love a sake that's a real nice savory style that hasn't had much polishing, or you could want to go for an elegant style that's had lots of polishing. And that's just a general rule of thumb. And obviously there's everything else in between. So this is a Ginjo, Junmai Ginjo. This has been polished to 60%. And this is using a rice called Yamada Nishiki. Yamada Nishiki is the king of sake rice in Japan, the real number one top rice.
So when I put my nose in it, I've got no way other to describe it. It just smells like sake. Sake is such a unique smell to it that as soon as we just for me, it's the first. I'm like, there it is.
Yeah.
And that can go wrong as well. I'll have sake and put it in there, and you suddenly you're like, oh shit, like that. What sort of makes that sort of? I don't know. I've attributed it to cat food before. It just has this
So what you're getting, which that is kind of a difficult aroma to smell, but to describe, but it tends to be the basis of a lot of sakes. It's basically the cereal rice notes combined with a umami koji element. It's those kind of two things put together. But then on top of that, you've got your kind of real nice fruity esters coming out of this, which is more down to the yeast.
So you're saying that you get some floral stuff from using more starch, and that is promoting the yeast to produce that sort of more...
Correct, especially when brewed at really low temperature, kind of stressing the yeast, restraining the yeast. At low temperature, it's going to pop out all these real nice
And do you just use sake yeast as well? It's a very specific line. Like I know for us, there's Mead yeast, but we very rarely use Mead yeast.
We played with it.
Yeah, like I've done little bits with it, and it's
I think to be honest though, with Mead yeast, there's not enough of a mead industry to have a proper mead style.
And what do you take? Like,
what is
what is Mead yeast as well? You know, like
anyway.
Yeah. So I mean, for us, we predominantly use sake specific yeast. We actually get our yeast from the Brewing Society of Japan, which is a kind of an arm of the Japanese government that kind of caretakers all the yeasts within Japan. So in this, it's a yeast called 901. 9 is basically the number of the category of yeast. 01 is a non-foaming mutated version. So it means we can pretty much fill up a tank without blowing the lid off. Yeah. So this is a kind of a nice aroma style yeast. Really good for brewing kind of ginjo style sakes. It's got
So ginjo was it's the polishing rate.
Yeah. So this sake was fermented at about 6 degrees for primary ferment was about 45 days.
Wow.
Really low temperature, really extended period of time. And what we're doing is we're really restraining the yeast and allowing it time to kind of pop out all these nice aromas. This is at 15%. This would have been brewed to around 16, and then it's been cut ever so slightly just ahead of bottling with some filtered water. And that's like cutting a whiskey, brings out the aroma and the flavor. So gives you a real nice balanced product. And then in bottle, this has been pasteurized and this has been matured for about 12 months in bottle.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I know we had this discussion before, but with your bottle conditioning as well, you don't necessarily just do it to take character from the yeast. Let's say if you bottle condition on the lees, there's actually still an enzymatic process that sometimes goes through with your bottle conditioning as well.
There is with some of it. There's always going to be some enzymatic reactions, no matter kind of how
Even
many times you
absolutely.
You're going to denature majority of your enzymes. Really, pasteurization for us is to kind of slow up, kind of try and get kind of a point of stasis where we're going to slow all of that up because we've really reduced it, but also to stop the fermentation for the yeast.
Course,
so this sake has been filtered down to like 0.3 microns. There shouldn't be any yeast in there, but just in case, we're kind of knocking that off because we want it to really sit in bottle for a long period of time, to really round off, mature, and all those subtle notes to kind of pop out.
And in terms of when you're finishing it, so I mean, here we use pasteurization for the mead to cut short the fermentation, right, which is pretty rare. But for you guys, is it the flavor you're trying to lock in, or has it reached a completion? How much further is there to go?
Yeah, so I mean,
because this doesn't taste bone dry to me.
No, it's not.
No, that's what I just wanted to get to. Like we've just been drinking it here without having a taste of it.
Yeah, this is we kind of call it's a medium. But we kind of call this one neutral because it doesn't sit as dry or sweet. It's got a bit of both going in there. So this is kind of an all day kind of drinking sake.
Yeah, nice.
At 15%.
At 15%.
Yeah. We go with a lot of different foods, but also just nice as just a sipper on its own. But for us, pasteurization is because we don't want that the enzymatic reaction to just keep going on and the bottle to change too much too quickly. You're always going to get change over time when you're maturing a product.
So we
really want to kind of slow that up and capture when we finish the fermentation, that product that we had. And also to make sure, because we want to keep this as a medium, we don't want this to go bone dry. If it carried on fermenting, we'd then end up with like a sparkling bottle, which this one's not supposed to be.
So the other side is, what I found really cool about sake too, is during that process, it actually gets sweeter over that enzymatic process because they're breaking down some of these unfermentable sugars into more simple in the bottle, and then that sort of increases the sweetness over time, which I find really
Absolutely.
interesting.
So because you've stopped any yeast activity, there's nothing in there to consume any more sugar. You can only actually make more sugar because you've got unfermentables that can be broken down. So in theory, most matured sakes are getting sweeter. And if you taste the sake that's, 2, 5, 10, 20 years old, they get kind of like darker, more kind of like raisiny, plummy, and typically sweeter, more kind of viscous, which we're going to taste one
cool.
in a bit.
Cool. So guys, if you're online, hi to Louisiana. Who we got on? Jero. Glad you're enjoying our sour. If you've got any other questions to Tom about sake or us about mead, whatever, just type them in the comments and we'll aim to get to them. I don't think there were many other questions.
Yeah, I think there was a couple of bits before, but let's not talk about that. We got them.
We got them.
But if we didn't get them, just pop them up again and we'll go at it. But this is like the other thing I've had with sake too is sake has a really nice acid profile. This one, the acid profile is quite balanced. It's not like it's balanced out with the sweetness. It seems like there's quite a low acidity
it's quite
acid
soft.
profile.
It's soft and round.
It's nice and round, and
This is really Miru is kind of much more one of our kind of classical approach sakes. Obviously, before we tried the can, that's a complete like new contemporary category. We've then jumped from that straight into a real classic kind of thoroughbred style. And then we're going to come on to some kind of more mature and interesting things.
Cool.
But I'd say vast majority of the sake we make sits much more in the classic can. And then we're kind of doing some interesting modern techniques on top of that.
Makes sense.
So our foundation as a brewery is kind of very based in the classical.
It's about getting the old things right first.
yeah,
Absolutely,
that's it. Yeah.
absolutely.
It's always like,
Especially when your process is so
complicated,
complicated is right.
like compared by brewing standards.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's not a dank IPA, is it?
I think as brewing goes, it's definitely right up there with, the complexities, the number of steps. Also, as a brewer, the amount of impact you can personally have on the outcome of the product is obscene, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It's like the outcome of your product. Obviously, you want the best building blocks of raw ingredients to go in there, but really the outcome is 90% down to do with the producer. So you can take great ingredients and make a terrible sake. You can take not the best ingredients in the world and make a decent sake. You know?
As long as you got those techniques behind you, right?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Do you want to open this one? So how did you get into it? Well, what were your what was your first steps into this, Tom? Were you a homebrewing sake? Or
I mean, there was way before that.
That's what I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Like, the good old days of steaming rice in the kitchen, I imagine.
Yeah. So even way before that, it was kind of a love of all kinds of alcohol, which I still have. But kind of probably too much consumption of sake, and a real love for it, and traveling to Japan and spending time in Japan, just enjoying sake, and then really kind of exploring sake fermentation off the back of my own experience brewing beer.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like a homebrew beer nut. That's kind of how I got into fermentation.
Then you perfected that, and then you were like, what can I do now? Yeah.
Too easy.
But there was kind of an element of that, because it was kind of like, not necessarily saying I perfected it, but sake just became so much more interesting for me.
Yeah.
Like once you go down this rabbit warren of sake production, it's kind of hard to focus on anything else, because there's just the intricacies and the variation that is the world of sake is crazy. So people say, I don't like sake. Like people say, I don't like vodka. Like sake is so many more things.
Yeah, we get it as well.
So
Well,
cool.
we don't like mead. And you're like, well, what mead have you tried? Like,
Have you tried our mead?
yeah.
So like right here, we just
I
taken
just had a sniff of that. And
The colour on this is cool too. Like it's
so we just
strawberry pink.
Yeah, pretty much.
Peachy,
Yeah, peachy. So we've got 4 sakes that we're tasting, all are
memories flooding
completely
back.
different corners of the spectrum. Just to kind of show you, the variation, but also kind of different styles, but also obviously different techniques and how they're made, but also different times of the year, times of the day, food pairing. So this Hannah is a new release from a couple of months ago. We kind of released it this side of lockdown. This is an interesting product because this is a pure Junmai sake as a base, and then it was a 50-50 ratio of sake to British plums.
So it does have
whole
plum.
plums.
Yeah, okay.
So the whole fruit with the stone and everything, steeped within the sake for a few months, kind of locked in tank. And then we took the liquor off and it went into a combination of red and white Burgundy oak to barrel age. Then it had extended barrel aging for, I think, over 6 months, and then blended and then bottled, pasteurized, and then matured for the whole year up until July, I think, which is when it was released. Yeah. So it's a really kind of interesting sake. And the reason we made it this way, so people might have heard of umeshu. So umeshu is like the Japanese plum liqueur.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
So plum liqueur is like the ume fruit, which is an indigenous plum in Japan. With
Is that
like,
the sail plum?
I don't know if it's the same, but yeah.
Because it's umeboshi.
Umeboshi is that
Umeboshi is the pickled plum.
Okay, is that the
Yeah, so that's like a fermented pickled plum.
Yeah.
But it's the same fruit.
Yep.
But if you took like the fresh fruit and basically put it in with a load of sugar, a load of like NGS, and you make a liqueur. Like that's what umeshu is, at least what modern umeshu is. We wanted to make kind of a British umeshu, but pure sake as if it was like 250 years ago. And then on top, we did some wine barrel aging, which was a bit of fun. Yeah.
Was this in, which barrel did you do this in?
This was in a combination of both red and white Burgundy oak and then blended. Yeah.
Oh, Tom.
Yeah, the nose on this is sick. The other one's quite delicate, and you can pick up, a little bit of that sort of sake carry. This is a lot more fruity.
Yeah, it's got this sweetness to it on the tongue, but it's juicy, it's tart.
It's got a depth on the nose as well.
You can really get that kind of like oxidative, like barrel character.
Yeah, you're right. The tartness as well isn't like a usual acid tartness either. It's quite creamy and tart. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a lot more, it feels thicker than it is.
You get that tannic structure. I think I can almost taste the stone as well.
Absolutely.
Like it's present.
You get this almond note at the back.
Right at the end as well.
Yeah. That was like really important for us. Like we used Herefordshire plums. We wanted to basically have it kind of indigenous British plums in there, and for us it had to be whole fruit.
Yeah.
So it was how much plums did you put? How did you? Okay, let's take that back a little bit. How did you use the plums?
So we basically washed each individual plum and threw them in the barrel, threw them in the tank. It was 500 litres of sake, 500 kilos of plums.
Nice.
It was a 50-50 ratio. Yeah.
That's what we want to see, right? If you go, we just did a plum mead, and I did the complete opposite, where I just put a little dollop in at the bottom and cleaned it up. But that's what, if you want to be like fruit forward, like that was to accentuate a little bit. But if you're going to put, this is it, like you need to be, that needs to punch you in the face.
Yeah, exactly. And for us, this is a plum sake, so I wanted those two things to be exactly 50-50.
Nice. That's nice. Yeah. That's awesome.
This is why we sat there and
I can imagine. And how strong was the ABV on this?
13?
14, I think.
Yeah. I guess. So they're all up there, aren't they?
Yeah.
So that's generally where you sort of aim between, right? You do your 5.5 range there, and then generally you're about 13 above,
so we do 5.5, which is our can range, which we're doing the next flavour of next week. It's being cans. That's going to be out in 2 weeks' time. And that's wasabi, so Japanese wasabi leaf and British cider apple.
Ooh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. So that's going to be like the drier one. The yuzu cucumber is kind of a medium. And then we've got another one kind of planned for later in the year. And then we go up to 11.5, which is our naturally carbonated sparkling sake. And then everything else sits somewhere really between 14 and 18. That's kind of, the majority of what we do is kind of around that area. Mid-grounds, 15 to 16.
Yeah, I think barrel aging quite common with sake?
Not really. Particularly oak. So obviously oak is much more of a European into a North American thing. So not something that's done in Japan or across Asia really at all. In Japan, there is a history of barrel aging or barrel steeping, but also barrel fermentation. But that's all Japanese cedar.
Cool.
Sugi,
It's quite sweet cedar as well, isn't it?
Yeah, but the thing with cedar, especially if it's relatively fresh, is it's got real like a ton of kind of oil and flavor.
Yeah.
So you get this thing called taruzake. So this sake is called taru, which means barrel. Taruzake is kind of a barreled sake. But you only need to like put it in cedar for like 3 weeks. And it's not there to age, it's there to actually just take on the flavor. And I think
kind of like you do with bourbon, right? You toast the barrel because you don't.
Correct,
You just want to pull out as much of that as quickly as possible.
Absolutely. Typically, if you're doing extended aging of sake, it actually happens in the bottle. So, like the one we're going to move on to next, that had extended aging in barrel, but then we put it in these little black beer bottles. Actually, that's the aging vessel. So we've been aging in the brewery in these little blocks because we wanted it to basically stay safe in this little time capsule. So no kind of light coming in, nothing like that. And these are actually being rebottled. So for Taru, we actually got a gold medal in the Sake Sommelier Association.
Congratulations.
Sake Challenge, thank you. This is the oldest European sake competition. So all the sake is kind of flown in from Japan. They do all the judging in Europe. And we just got a gold with this, literally
amazing, man.
This time last week. And then we're kind of releasing our gold medal edition. So this is being actually decanted into a clear bottle, a different style. It's like a small polo bottle with a nice wooden top.
Yeah, nice.
And it's like an exhibition bottle. Now the sake is like actually ready because this has been maturing for a long time. Now we're kind of ready to actually properly get it out there.
That's cool.
So we can show off the colour and everything in a nice clear bottle.
Cool. Should we give it a whirl?
Yeah, I'm super excited about it now. We're actually prepared.
Well, we've got a bottle aim now.
I say we're prepared. James prepared us.
Yeah.
So as it stands right now, it's kind of like a 1-session carafe. So 330 ml. This is a 17.5% sake. So the strongest that we've got here. And yeah, like we said, barrel aged.
Let's get
You
into
see
it.
the colour?
Ooh.
Got this nice kind of toffee colour.
Yeah, it's almost like light port.
Exactly.
Like sherry.
Yeah, it's in your kind of
It's gonna say
Oloroso
sherry. It's a little
sherry.
darker than.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it smells so umami.
Yeah.
There's so much.
Oh
on
my
that.
god, yeah.
That's amazing.
What does that remind me of?
So it's like it's got that soy, miso,
Yeah.
bonito, mushroom, but also like caramel, burnt caramel.
That's what it
there's
kind
a-
of reminds me
there's a
when
hint
you
of that caramel.
like. I know this is a weird thing, but I did a couple of weeks ago. I did like cornflour shiitake mushrooms with like just caramelized honey and stuff like that. And it's kind of got that sort of element to it, like when
Absolutely,
you're
yeah,
frying it. And I was like, "What is that?" I was like,
yeah.
"That's exactly what it is." It's this nice little balance of.
So you basically just want this over
there's something else
vanilla ice
underneath
cream
there.
or with like a blue cheese, something quite sharp.
Yeah, I can see that with the blue cheese. Like, whoa. That's fascinating. Sorry. Because
I remember I tried
It's
to.
like super viscous, like the legs
yeah,
on
exactly.
there.
You can
Because
see
I was
it,
asking
it's
you a
dripping
little while ago about barrel aging sake and what happens when you oxidize it and all this, and you gave me this sake from Tennessee, and you were like, "This is how to do it wrong." And like, I still enjoyed that. Like, it was weird and it was high alcohols were horrible, but I was like, I still got a cool aspect to it. But yeah, this is what I was talking about. Like, this is what I would hope would happen when you put that in a barrel.
Can you make it more umami? How would, because I want, sorry, I'm just tasting that and I'm like, oh, I've got a hint of something, but actually, how far can you take it?
So we made a sake a couple of years ago, so for Pour Symposium. So
I remember, yeah. The drinks like
bartender symposium that happens kind of across the world. So we were kind of guest speakers for the one in Paris a few years back. And for that, we made a special sake. It'd be called Umami 100. So when you're kind of making a typical sake, your ratio of your koji rice to your regular steamed rice, you usually have about 20% koji rice as your engine, 80% of your regular steamed rice as your fuel. We did one that was 100% koji rice, so like 5 times the typical quantity, but without any of the fuel. So that was there to kind of break itself down. And that's kind of really maxing out. And that was a rice that had big protein structure, wasn't too far polished, loads of protease on the koji, and then tons of koji, fermented purely as a
So
koji.
just to go back, we didn't really go through it. Like, the nose is incredible for one, but then on the palate, the alcohol isn't forward, right? Like,
no, not at all.
I would say that though, if you were to ask me, those two have got the same amount of alcohol.
It's like, for me, it's just got this like massive, like oily mouthfeel. It's super smooth.
super
and it just
clean.
keeps on giving, Yeah, and very clean.
really cool.
There's nothing in there that makes you go like, oh,
There's no spikiness to the flavour. It's very
But it's one of those things you want to carry on drinking just to understand it. So for me,
Absolutely.
that's why I say fascinating. Just kind of, you want to unpick the flavors.
Yeah.
Oh, man, the nose, though. The nose
there's
is
a lot
just
going
so
on there. There's a
cool.
lot going on. And I think you've got a lot of kind of food pairing potential, but you just, winter months are rolling in. You just want to just sit there.
Oh man, it smells like
good film on or something, and just
the smell's got the feeling of like you've just finished cooking and you're just about to sit down to eat. It's just got like everything that when you're cooking a meal throughout the house and you sit down and your house smells incredible. It's kind of got that feel to it. It's got this nice little bit of umami. It's got this sweetness to it. This caramelization there.
Yeah, that is amazing.
It's also like there's some undertones to that, and like I don't want to. It kind of reminds me of like blue cheese. It's just got this like
it's that hint. That's what I was asking about. More umami flavor.
because I always get it too. I always like cheese is such an off flavor you don't want to say about somebody's
But
drink.
it's not the cheese bit.
It's not.
It's the umami.
correct.
It's the umami
it's like the Parmesan rind
Yeah.
kind of smell. So, and that's kind of quite a big flavor or aroma that comes through with a lot of more savory style sakes. So for sake, it's definitely not an off flavor. As long as it doesn't smell like cheesy feet or something.
I think
Which we all try to avoid. Right?
Yeah.
Some better than others.
But yeah, this for us is, this is the sake that kind of keeps on giving. And, this could just be parked away, all the damage is done. That's the whole point. So buy a sake, enjoy it, but you could park this one away for
I could just smell this all day.
Yeah. And the cool thing is, because it's already, obviously, as you can see the color, like it's oxidized to hell. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you open the bottle and it stays open, it goes in the fridge and it's still not open, still open. Same with the plum. Like they've already had this kind of oxidization. The other sake, especially like the can, you just want to drink that fresh. The ginjo, I'd say drink that within like 10 days, but just stick it in the fridge after you've opened it.
We get the same thing with that barrel fermented boucher.
Yeah, exactly.
Like as soon as that's open, like we say with everybody, if it's carbonated, you probably want to drink it in a sitting, right? Like it's not that it's going to go wrong. It's going to change the flavor profile as soon as that carbonation's gone, right?
Absolutely.
That's why the carbonation's there because it needs to be or it should be.
There's cool stuff you can do with this. You can make get some nice Japanese whiskey and do like a Japanese style Manhattan with this and the whiskey. Yeah. Get some like hibiki and on the go. There's
Nikka coffee grain, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot.
That's why I've been smashing recently.
There's a Nikka coffee grain, in a Manhattan or in a I did a bourbon lift with it.
Bourbon lift.
Bourbon lift is it's like cream and milk with soda water.
Oh right.
And it's just like there's something to this, right? It's a cocktail
like a
for a reason.
Thing, yeah.
And it's like light but creamy, and like it's kind of I could see this with a bit of Nikka coffee grain and a bourbon lift, just to give it that deep. Like you could use this with any cocktail just to give it like a depth of complexity. Yeah,
exactly. That's really cool.
And that was kind of the point of that Umami 100 that we did. That was like a super limited. I think we only did like 100. Less than 100 bottles or something. But that the point was, we made that for the Bartender Symposium, and that was made actually as a cocktail ingredient. That was the point of that. So if you wanted to impart umami into a cocktail, you would use a small portion of that.
Of course, that makes sense.
That wasn't really made to kind of sit there and sip. However, we did save back about 25, 30 bottles that now have been aging for like 3 years. So
that's pretty cool.
We will bring that out again at some point.
This is
that's pretty cool. Should we open our Codelab?
Yeah, we should.
Whilst we were with these have all been served, I would say about 10, 12 degrees. Like just is that what would you serve them at? And what do you serve different sakis at?
Yeah, so across all of our range, like on our website, on the back of the bottles, we do temperature serves, and most of our sakis have 2 temperature serves because sake is awesome to have warm as well on the whole, particularly the pure kind of thoroughbred stuff. But I would say if you've got a good sake in your hands, it should taste awesome at room temperature. So it's not something you should worry too much about. I would kind of fear actually serving sake too cold.
What? Because you just don't get the aromas coming out.
Yeah, you're gonna suppress flavor and aroma. I'm kind of wary of any drink that's served to me too cold, to be honest with you.
Yeah, unless it's one of those little lagers from Tesco, which
that's okay. That's for a reason.
But
that's just to put on your head first of all.
Yeah.
Oh.
What's happening?
So I've kind of done that.
Do you need another one? You all right?
Survive.
So most of these across the range would say recommend kind of wine fridge temperature, like serve at 10 degrees. Then we've got kind of, I think this one we're kind of looking at a bit more kind of room temperature, a bit warmer. And then the ginjo, I think we've got on there maybe 40 or 45 degrees. Across most of our range of the pure Junmai sakes, we've got to serve sitting between 40 and 50 degrees, but quite specific to the sake.
Yeah.
And you just heat that up at home in like a bain-marie kind of style. Don't microwave it. Don't heat the sake directly in a pan on the hob. Just kind of boil some water, put it in a saucepan or something in the boiling water.
You're not just putting the whole bottle in the microwave and just being done with it.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with the microwave is you just go too hot, right? And you're burning the alcohol off. So, yeah, we're not serving like piping hot sake. You're just kind of like in like elevated bath temperature, like 45, 50. Really at a max for sake looking about 60 degrees, that's quite hot. But yeah, best way, kettle boiled into like a saucepan or another vessel, and then just either get like a jug, decant some of the sake into the jug and put that into the boiling water to heat up naturally. Or if you've got like a small bottle or something, or you've drank most of this cold and then you want to have a bit warm, just put the bottle in there. Like these are all hefty bottles, they can take it. But ideally have a thermometer or a little probe and gauge the temperature because it will heat up quite quick. Take it off, just pour it and drink it, enjoy it. Yeah.
All right. Just to finish off, Will, do you want to talk to us about how we did this collab?
So
recap us.
Yeah, so this collab we did a 50-50 split of fermentable. Actually, no, it wasn't a 50-50 split of fermentables realistically. We did a separate fermentation on both, and then we did a secondary fermentation in a white wine, the Grappen barrel.
Yep.
So blending the two, the
two
sake
together.
Yeah, so they both had like primary separate, and then they're brought together and co-fermented, but within the oak. Yeah.
And so the honey we used, was it an orange blossom?
No, so we used a Hackney honey.
Oh, the Hackney honey.
So we use we got local honey in just to get the idea, because we both sort of started here in Print Village as well as two companies.
Oh, yeah.
So
we used to be just literally opposite these guys.
So it was kind of that idea of like, okay, let's stick in London as much as we can. So we did it with our house yeast, Hackney honey. We left the gravity quite high, so we have most of the secondary fermentation came from our residual sugar.
It did, yeah.
And then you guys come in with quite a classic sake on your side.
Yeah, we kind of went in with about
rice, I think.
Yeah, we did Calrose, Californian sake rice, 70% polished, and we put that in at about 16.5%, and then that was with one of our classic sake yeasts. So you kind of, at the point of blending into barrel, you had like excess fermentables. We had then the killer yeast that just kind of combined and took over, and then that fermented out in barrel to what we've got now. Yeah.
Cool. What do we think, guys?
I love it.
This thing
really
was
cool.
like, when you have an idea, especially when you're doing collabs, when you got an idea of what you want, and then you go and do it and it comes out, it never comes out exactly how
you expect,
how you wanted it, right? Because
we had kind of an end goal dream, and then we had our expectations. I think this surpassed the end goal dream.
Yeah, which was the crazy thing. Like, it's
cool.
so much better than we ever could have expected. Like, all we were worried about was, our side, we need the honey character to stay in there. We always talk about that. Like, whenever we do a collab, it needs to be there. It's the integral part of our flavor profile. We wanted it to be, the carbonation to be on point. We wanted it to be nice and round and not just be, a split between the two styles as well. And, have the sweetness come forward and the sake finish.
I'd say for me, it is that perfect marriage between the two products, and it's amazing. So we've obviously done other collabs where you just lose that honey characteristic. It's so easy to do. This is amazing in the way that it's preserved.
I think that comes down to the fact that we did those two separate primaries, and then we gave it time as well. Yeah. Like, I think we did the bottle conditioning and carbonation here, and it was a good 2.5 months after that where I finally was like, oh, cool, it's ready. It took some time, and it was a little bit worrying during that process, especially with the carbonation as well. It's quite slow. So
it's carbonating at like 14%, right? So slow, but took the time, took a few months. But I guess, that plus the fermentation, plus the barrel. I mean, I think we started brewing the sake that went into that like October last year. So I think we're already past the start date when we actually started the sake. So it's kind of quite interesting.
That's cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, for us it was our fermentations are quite quick, so just being able to hold that back and get that to you before it just chewed through all that sugar as well, which is kind of cool. So then you also cannibalized our yeast in there as well, which is
that's fair.
So there's quite a lot of complexity there.
What was quite cool as well, like you guys obviously brewed the mead here, it went into barrel here, the barrel then traveled to us with the mead in it, and then we put the sake into that. So the barrel spent time in both places. So it's kind of like started here, ended up at ours, packaged at ours, came back here, in bottle carbonation back here. So it's like, it's like a true
collab,
right?
Yeah, we joke about this all the time, like that the email collabs that happen now, like that. But
we've all done them.
But for me, the reason of doing a collab is to go somewhere that I find really interesting, or in a process I find interesting, and go like, cool, I want to put what I know into this and see what else I can do.
It was a real nice 50-50 and getting the two teams together and everything. Yeah, it was super cool.
It was fun.
And it was the thing, it was like 50-50 in and it's 50-50 out. That's the beauty with it. You got so much mead, so much sake, beautiful nose on it, and you got this nice meaty finish as well. Yeah,
the sweetness level too is something that I'm really, really happy with, because it's quite hard, number one, to hit that and get the right sweetness level to make sure everything comes through and it's not too sweet, too honey forward.
Yeah.
But it's the carbonation help balance it out. The sake nose as well just kind of helps that umami character as well. It just kind of helps separate from the sweetness as well. So it just takes everything into the back and allows everything its own little place.
Yeah. It's got great acid structure. It's like super moreish. Yeah.
Yeah. It's good.
I'm going to attempt to drink one.
All right. Guys, if you've got any questions, do give us a shout. We'll be around for a couple more minutes before we realise that actually Instagram Live, you can only do an hour at a time.
You can. I think that's kind of long enough.
It probably is long enough.
People don't want to listen to us for more than that.
Oh, you say that? People have asked me, well, can you do a 4-hour one?
That's just you personally.
Just for sleep. Just for sleep.
Yeah, it's AMSR. Tom talking about Mead.
Yeah, and then
keep those in your back pocket.
Yeah, keep those in your back pocket. This is what I mean. It gets a bit loose at the end of the hour, so we just have to, well, Tom, thanks a lot for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Nice. Yeah, it's been really
awesome.
talking to us.
It's been great. Like I've
really
tasted through your stuff before, and every time that I do, I'm always surprised.
Appreciate it.
It's really
Thank
good.
you.
It's
awesome.
You do incredible stuff.
Yeah,
you guys too, an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No, thanks very much for coming.
When are we doing our next collab?
Yeah,
you got to kick it off.
It takes 12 months, so you got to start now.
It's got to be in cans, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Next week, let's kick one off.
Yeah.
But thanks guys. Thanks for joining us again, and see you all next week.
See you later, guys.